Live, where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Xtra.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on ABC-7 Extra. It is Sunday night. Glad you're with us. Now, since we broke the news on Monday that the UMC CEO Jim Valenti was awarded a bonus of about $120,000 despite the public hospital's challenging year, our viewers have really been talking about the issue on social media, emailing us as well. Now, Valenti has received even bigger bonuses before. But what seemed to make a lot of the people cringe was the fact that this year's bonus came just months after the hospital laid off 56 employees. The board defending that big bonus, saying they're contractually obligated to reward him for meeting goals and that patient care has never been better at UMC. Tonight we're talking about that and more. Joining me, Commissioner Vince Perez. He's called for the resignation of a member of the UMC board who awarded Valenti that bonus. And we did reach out to the UMC board and Mr. Valenti. They declined the opportunity to come on this program. But this is the only televised platform where we can talk about important local issues in a more in-depth manner. And we cannot forego a program about a big story because newsmakers won't come on this show. You, our viewers, still deserve a thorough discussion, especially when it's about something that involves public funds. We also reached out to former board members as well. Either way, we've heard a lot from you this week, and we want to hear from you again tonight. Email us your comments, your questions now to ABC-7Extra@KVIA.com. You can also reach us by phone at 496-1775. If you're on Twitter, tweet me at Maria GABC7 or with the hashtag ABC7Extra. Now, this began on Monday when I reported on Valenti's latest evaluation. In that evaluation, board members praised the way Valenti has improved patient care at UMC and his work with medical reimbursement. They say he's a masterful manager of talent. But the evaluation also highlights areas where he needs improvement, saying Valenti can be thin-skinned, needs to be more tactful, and could better manage relationships with Texas Tech and the Children's Hospital.
We are making a lot of sacrifice.
That was Jim Valenti in August when UMC faced a $60 million shortfall. It was hit hard by El Paso Children's Hospital inability to pay back UMC's past investment. UMC called for a tax increase, then backtracked. In the end, the hospital implemented furloughs, cut benefits, and eliminated positions.
There's no doubt that this has been a challenging year.
UMC Board Chair William Hansen says it was one of the most difficult years, but one area didn't suffer.
Always patient quality of care, patient satisfaction, that's always at the top of our priority list.
Hansen says Valenti met the expectations of the board and those of the Joint Commission, the organization that accredits UMC. His base pay, about $460,000. He did get a bonus. Because he met goals outlined in his contract, the board awarded him about $119,000.
It's reasonable in the context of the market.
Hansen says the pay is comparable to the salaries of other hospital CEOs around the region. In the evaluation, board members don't include their name with their comments, but here are a few. Quote, UMC and El Paso is truly blessed to have this gifted and generous hospital leader. But another board member writes, quote, Valenti needs to use more tact in dealing with the children's hospital situations. Needs to weigh his choice of words when in a difficult and challenging situation. Hansen, though, believes it was an overall positive performance.
My personal feeling is that, yeah, I think it's a vote of confidence.
On Tuesday, R. Darren Hunt then asked Valenti this.
Do you feel comfortable taking that after what happened just a few months ago with laying those people off?
Yeah, I think it's important that you have in all organizations competent leadership.
Valenti has received bonuses of more than $100,000 each of the past 10 years. His first year in 2006, he received the largest one of more than $148,000. His lowest was in 2007 when he got just over $105,000. The past 3 years, his bonuses have ranged from $120,000 to $133,000.
You do understand that this has upset a lot of people. Do you have anything to say to those people that it's upset, or those people who may still be looking for a job right now?
You know, I think there's plenty of opportunities, and we're hiring many people in healthcare.
Every year, this is something that's contractually obligated, and as far as I know, there hasn't been a year where the board has not fulfilled its obligation.
UMC board member Laura Ponce defended the UMC board's decision and said she would not step down when Commissioner Vince Perez publicly called for her resignation.
I think that communication is a two-way street.
Is there any chance that you would
I don't
return
believe
that
so.
money?
No, I don't believe so.
You
And
feel
so-
you've earned that money?
Absolutely.
And joining me now, County Commissioner Vince Perez. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Commissioner, I want to start with the bonus. If there's a contractual obligation to pay a CEO based on specific goals, to award him a bonus based on those metrics, those quantifiable metrics, and the employee meets those goals, then what's wrong with fulfilling that contractual obligation?
Well, you know, speaking for myself as commissioner, I think one of the most disappointing aspects about the situation is, like many viewers, we're upset to learn about this bonus because I learned about it through the media. Earlier in the year, when we had our budget sessions, UMC presented sort of a very dire budget to Commissioner's Court. They requested an 8% budget increase, which is actually the largest amount allowed by law, only 3 days later to have it retracted. They asked commissioners for a $20 million short-term loan to meet their cash flow needs, which we have not received an update on that. And then you had the layoffs, where you had 56 employees who were laid off, only then months later to find out that these bonuses were handed out. So I think aside from the metrics and the contractual obligations, we were very disappointed because I feel that the situation that was presented to us during the budget season and these bonuses just don't coincide. And I think it presents a very different picture, a financial picture of UMC.
And we're going to talk about sort of those communication issues that you bring up. But if we just take a look at the metrics in and of themselves, right? Jim Valenti says that the metrics that his bonus is based upon were met. These are specific things like quantifiable progress in patient care, patient safety, patient satisfaction, maintaining of the facilities, and the financial operations of UMC. Based on those things, do you believe that Mr. Valenti deserved the bonus?
Well, one of the factors that's also evaluated is his ability to effectively establish and maintain relations in the community, in particular with local elected officials, state and federal officials. I feel as a commissioner that the communication between UMC has really broken down over the past year. And so the fact that when I looked at that particular metric in itself, there were several board members who gave him the highest marks possible. There were some that recognized that there does need to be an improvement in communication. So when you look at a few of those metrics, I think there seems to be a disconnect between the Board of Managers and I think the Commissioner's Court, who are perhaps the most important strategic partner that UMC has. And to see that deterioration, that relationship, to feel that there's not that communication, and then to see that he got such high marks for maintaining those relations, I think was very disappointing.
But based on patient care at UMC, do you believe that Mr. Valenti deserved the bonus?
I think based on patient care, UMC has certainly excelled and has done well. And so on other metrics, I think he has certainly met those. Again, it was the lack of communication with Commissioner's Court and the very different financial situation that was presented to us early on.
Okay, let's talk about something that has come up a lot, and that's the fact that they backtracked on a need for a tax increase. You mentioned that was sort of one of the factors that led to sort of this deterioration in communication. But is that so bad for a public entity to say, we need to raise taxes, and then say, you know what, we've evaluated and we don't? I mean, for a taxpayer, that's a taxpayer watching, they could say, that's great, they found a way to deal with it without a tax increase.
Sure, and as a commissioner has to vote on the budget, it's also great. I think what was concerning for us was the fact that this tax increase was presented as very necessary, and that if the tax increase was not passed, patient care would suffer. And those were the terms that were used when requesting the tax increase. And then only to have it retracted 3 days later, really, yes, that is a good thing overall for the public that we passed a budget that did not increase taxes. But it really raises a lot of question then about the level of trust. Well, then what was it? Was it a very dire situation that needed an 8% tax increase, which is the statutory maximum? Or were there other ways that the situation could have been presented? Back then, there was a lot of issues with Children's Hospital, and which are still ongoing, and dealing with the debt, and they were using that situation as describing the need for the tax increase. So from a relationship standpoint, it just causes a lot more questions than answers, because we depend on that information and we depend on that analysis to make decisions when passing the budget.
Okay, the El Paso Times reporting today that Valenti is not the only one who got a bonus, saying that his executive staff also received bonuses, in total about $300,000. The Board of Managers, according to the paper, telling them that they had budgeted these $300,000 for these bonuses. Of course, that's raising a lot of eyebrows with people in the community. And I want to read part of a statement that William Hansen, the board chair, said at the board meeting this week. He said, quote, and we have those, if we can put that on the screen, quote, "We hear the criticism, we respect your concerns. Pay for performance benefits are based on the achievement of goals and targets that were set by this Board of Management last year. The board directed some employees, including our CEO, to work towards these goals, and if the goals were achieved, the employees would receive compensation. The employees performed that work and they achieved these goals. UMC is obligated to pay these employees. It would be unfair and improper to do so." So on the one hand, Commissioner Perez, you have to pay competitive salaries to retain good talent, to retain good leadership heading this very complex, big organization like UMC. But on the one hand, you have to balance that with the fact that it's an organization that laid off 56 people this week. So how do you strike, this year, I'm sorry, so how do you strike that balance?
Well, certainly we have to pay competitive wages. I mean, we're talking about an institution that has a budget of over $500 million. About $75 million of that comes from taxpayers. So we do need certainly the very best leadership possible to help ensure that patient care continues to excel and the hospital itself is successful. I think, speaking for myself as commissioner, when we went through the budget process, we had 2 joint meetings with the Board of Managers of UMC. They presented a list of cuts that they were making and sacrifices that the hospital was making overall. One of those cuts included that nobody at UMC would receive merit increases. So there was
they're maintaining nobody got merit increases. This is not merit pay, that this is bonus pay based on goals.
And that was an opportunity for, I believe, somebody either on the Board of Managers or for the CEO to say, while there may not be merit increases this year, this does not include the contractual increases. Because, again, speaking for myself, I was under the impression when they presented that there would not be these types of bonuses or merit increases.
And I think to any sort of regular viewer or taxpayer watching at home, to them it's sort of a matter of semantics. Like, okay, yeah, you're not getting a merit pay increase, but you're getting a $120,000 bonus.
Exactly. And well, I feel, and that's what was disappointed, because I feel that there was a lack of transparency as we were talking through these issues. So when you say that there's no merit increases across the board, you present it as a savings. We assume that to also include bonuses as well.
But Commissioner Perez, you heard Laura Bonta say communication is a two-way street. I mean, couldn't you or the commissioners, other commissioners, could have you informed yourselves in other ways of this? Why only rely on what they're telling you?
Well, again, after those 2 meetings, we had our audit, and our auditors did a fantastic job they spent countless hours reviewing the budget. And it came as a surprise to them as well that there was $300,000 allocated for bonuses. I just don't think it was something that was really brought to the forefront in a very transparent manner that was very clear to everyone at the table.
Okay. Valenti's pay, though, we did some research. His bonus really not on top of the list when you look at what public hospital CEOs are awarded every year for bonuses. And I wanted to, he alluded to that when we spoke with him this week. I want to hear what he had to say.
But exclusive of the Children's Hospital, we've had a solid year. And even though we have to make adjustments, we're foregoing merits, we're doing a lot of other belt tightening, and so it's part of executive compensation. When you look at the benchmarks, and I know I am between the lowest 10th percent and the 25th of colleagues.
Now, some of his supporters would argue that he should he should be higher than that, that he should be paid more than that, because patient care, they say, is the cornerstone of a solid, good medical facility, and that he has improved that drastically.
Well, what I would say is that, again, UMC had indicated this is their most difficult year financially in the past decade. So if this was the most difficult year in the past 10 years, and they still receive bonuses, I guess under which circumstances, I guess, would bonuses be either be reduced or be cut back? And I think that's a big question for a lot of people, and certainly for myself as a commissioner. When the county faced very difficult budget times before I came onto the court during the recession, it was a very difficult time where elected officials took pay cuts, departments were required to make cuts across the board, and everybody participated in making cuts so we could make ends meet. So in this year, when this was their most difficult financial situation in 10 years, and they still received a substantial amount of bonuses, then under what circumstances would bonuses not be granted, or under what circumstances?
What would it take? If they're saying it's been the most challenging year, then what would it take?
Exactly.
So I guess a question that we had from one of our viewers is, can there be a clause in the contract that states specific situations in which the bonuses can be voided, right?
And that's a very valid question. See, that's why communication with the Board of Managers is so important. The Board of Managers, there are 7 Board of Managers who oversee UMC's budget. It is probably the most influential board that is not directly elected by the public. And one of their chief responsibilities is selecting an administrator, the CEO, and then providing a contract that gives them fair compensation with those bonuses. So I certainly think that after this news and after this experience, there needs to be a reevaluation of that contract to see if there can be circumstances in which bonuses can either be reduced based on the financial health of UMC or other metrics. But that's something that I would certainly like to see.
Okay, and we have a tweet from Joaquin. He says, this is having an impact on morale at UMC. No raises for anyone. Mandatory 5 furlough days. Reduction in employee activities. So clearly the employees are having a tough year themselves. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk about the resignation or the call for the resignation that you made to Laura Ponce, the vice chair of the UMC board. So stay with us. You're watching ABC-7 Xtra. Remember, we want to hear from you. You can call us at 915-496-1775. Email us, ABC7Extra@KVIA.com. On Twitter, Maria G ABC7, or with the hashtag ABC7Extra. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ABC7 Extra. We're talking about UMC today with Commissioner Vince Perez, as well as the the bonus for Mr. Valenti. Now, we have some tweets. John says, if it's under his contract, then they shouldn't complain, but the raise shows no respect to employees of UMC who were let go. Adrian has a question. Were the bonuses given a contractual obligation that, if not given, would have placed the county at risk? Do you know that?
That I'm not sure. I have not seen the contract, and those are some of the questions that we're going to have moving forward, and as we review that.
I mean, that seems a little bit disturbing that commissioners as a whole haven't seen Valenti's contract, or you haven't seen the contract.
Right, because again, that's the chief responsibility of the Board of Managers in setting the compensation levels, particularly for the Finance Committee. It's their responsibility to ensure that the compensation levels are fair, and that there's also incentive measures in there for pay. But I think what was upsetting about this year is that there does appear to be an inequality in the treatment of employees. There were furloughs for most of the staff, which was part of the list of cuts that was provided to the Commissioner's Court that all employees had to take. But then you have some top-level administrators who weren't subject to that and were getting bonuses. So it created this impression that there's this unfairness in the treatment of employees.
And Laura Ponce, the vice chair of the UMC board, you've called for her resignation this week. And I want to read one of the comments that Mr. Hansen said about this. If we can take those, he said, quote, "I think it is important to remember that the UMC board decisions are made as a result of a collaborative and collective process of critical thinking and decision-making in which all board members participate. Individual board members do not make policy or contractual decisions alone. It is unfair to single out an individual board member for a decision that was reached and agreed to by 100% of the board members. So have to ask you, Commissioner Perez, I know she's a board member appointed by your office to the UMC board, but is it really productive to single her out publicly like this and ask for her resignation?
Well, she was appointed by my predecessor, first and foremost, and
right.
so I didn't have the opportunity to appoint her myself. And I think first and foremost, that's one issue that I take. Secondly, she serves as the chair for the Finance Committee, which is responsible for a lot of these financial issues, not only regarding budget, but regarding compensation. And third, I just feel that there's a lack of communication. In their own bylaws, the board members are responsible for communicating directly with Commissioners Court regarding the operation of the hospital. And I just feel that there really hasn't been that over the past several months. And certainly when you find out this news through the media, it was very upsetting, and I felt that there should have been better communication through this whole process.
Speaking of communication, when we saw the tension build between the Children's Hospital and UMC this summer, one of the things that came out was communication. In the evaluation for Jim Valenti, some of the board members write that maybe he should improve his public image, that he should work on building relationships with UMC partners and maybe watch his words in public. How much of that tension do you believe is just sort of natural fallout from a very strenuous financial situation, and how much of it is caused by personalities?
Well, I think it's not only just with Children's, but it's also with Texas Tech. I think we've seen some very contentious moments this year regarding some contracts regarding Texas Tech. But what's also something that was very concerning was my board member's response back to me that she was not going to step down and she intends to finish her term. Unfortunately, commissioners don't have the authority to remove board members. They are there for the full 3-year term. So she would have to step down voluntarily. She just indicated her willingness to want to finish out her term, and there was simply just no recognition of the issues that I had outlined in my letter regarding the communication and the series of events that I felt that need to be improved upon. The chairman's statement also, you'll notice, makes no reference of a sort of a willingness to improve the communications or concerns that are outlined. And I think that's also part of the frustration. There's another board member who was quoted in today's El Paso Times who also says that he doesn't believe that there exists a communication problem between Commissioners Court, and so he doesn't know where it's coming from. So I definitely think that there's even a lack of a recognition that a problem even exists, and that's what's very concerning, and that's something that needs to be addressed first and foremost.
Okay, we have a phone call, if we can take that phone call. Hi, can you hear us? All right, it looks like they're working on that phone call. We're going to try to get it as soon as we can. But I guess the question that comes up about singling her out, if the situation is truly this dire, where you feel she has to resign, why not call for the resignation of the entire board?
Well, because she's
if
the
it's that
appointee.
severe, though.
Sure. She's the appointee for the Precinct 3 office, and I felt it was within my realm to go and ask for that. You know, asking for the resignation of other board members who are appointed by other commissioners, they may not have the same issue that I have, or that I feel that currently exists with my representative. And so that's why I felt it was warranted to ask for her resignation.
Okay. A tweet from John: when it comes to EP Children's, Valenti and the board have let the problems go out of control. We'll be right back. We have still a lot to talk about. We have more of your emails and tweets, so stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about UMC tonight. This is from Elisa. I am one of the laid-off employees. If Jim Valenti is such a great leader, then why could he not manage the hospital to keep employees working? Why hasn't the Children's Hospital laid off any of their employees if they're the problem? This is tax money he's getting. That bonus of $120,000, he could have kept at least 3 or 4 employees. And that is from Elisa. We have Patsy on the line, if we can take her. Patsy, what's your comment or your question?
Well, I just wanted to say, when I found out that it outraged me, but learning that it was a contractual obligation made it a little more palatable. Hopefully next year something can be done so this doesn't happen in the event that they're financial straits. And clearly, Mr. Valenti is not of the Oscar Leeser CEO managing style. I think he earns a lot of money, and he could have declined the bonus.
Thank you, Patsy, for your remarks. Commissioner Perez, first of all, thank you for being here. It was really hard to get people on this program.
My pleasure.
But I do want to bring this up because, we're getting a lot of emails and a lot of tweets and phone calls. Does it bother you that there's not somebody from UMC here?
I think one of the more disappointing aspects of this whole situation is the fact that we see board members and they're saying that they stand by their decision 100%, but yet they're unwilling to defend that sort of in a public forum. I think perhaps the most disappointing comment that I heard from the chairman was that when they asked him about it, he says, we've already moved on, we're dealing with more pressing issues, and we've kind of moved beyond that. I think that's really insensitive to the public. I think that's actually quite offensive because as public officials, and even though they're not directly elected to the public, they're managing taxpayer funds. And I think the public is certainly entitled to decide what issues are important and what issues need to be talked about. And I think when you see the chairman of the board saying, well, we've moved on, we're not really going to talk about that anymore, when you see the CEO say, I'm not going to talk about it anymore and address it, it is sending a message that this issue to the public, well, we've kind of moved beyond it.
His evaluation called for a more sophisticated PR strategy. How much of this is just bad PR management?
Well, again, I think it really does boil down to communication. I think had this been, had everybody been on the same page, or had this been clear at the beginning, certainly during the budget process, it wouldn't have been such a surprise when this came out when it did. But there hasn't been anybody from the board who has been willing to be interviewed extensively or answer the tough questions. In government, we make decisions and take thousands of votes, and unfortunately, there's times where you can't please everybody, and some votes are going to upset some people. But you have to at least show a willingness to answer people's concerns, even those who disagree, and face the music. And I think this is one of those circumstances where people are rightly upset. There are some issues that need to be addressed, but it's very disappointing to see that, that nobody from the board, particularly the board chairman who's tasked with communicating for the board, isn't here to justify that, especially when they say that they stand by the decision 100%.
And we should say he did give us an interview this week. We talked to him on Monday when we asked for his evaluation. They just declined to be on this program. Thank you so much.
All right.
We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this informative and helpful. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.